Well, Frank Frangie, it is the week that everyone has circled on their calendars. Number 2 Georgia traveling to number 4 Alabama this weekend in primetime, 7:30 p.m. kick. It is a game that everyone is anticipating to be probably the game of the year. First, let's just talk about the matchup. What do you like from both these teams?
Well, first of all, I like how nervous you're going to be during the game. That's the part I like the best, probably. These are two good teams. Georgia, I think, has the best roster in America, Alessandro. I felt that way all along. I still think that. I think they've got the best roster in America. I think they are really that good. I think it's that good of a Georgia team. They got a veteran quarterback in Carson Beck, obviously. But Alabama's got a new coach. I'll tell you what, when we really learned Alabama about them was when they went up to Wisconsin. They played a close game against USF. I thought maybe they're off a little bit. But, man, when they went to Wisconsin, you learned a lot about Kalen DeBoer, a lot about Jalen Milroe. I think it's a fantastic game. And as you know better than I do, that place is going to be rocking in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. I can't wait to watch it.
Oh, hundreds of thousands of people will probably be in Tuscaloosa for that game. I actually took off. Justin Barney's going to be anchoring Saturday night because I told him this is my Super Bowl. This is my Christmas right here for Saturday night. When you look at Georgia and the Bulldogs, they had a tough time in Kentucky. They were able to pull out a win. They were on their bye week last week, so they're completely fresh for this game. When you look at Alabama, you just talked about the big win over Wisconsin. They just came off their bye week, so we have two fresh, rested teams going head to head. Do you think this may be a preview of what we may see when the competition comes for the playoffs?
Well, I do. I think they both have a great chance to make the playoffs. The game to keep an eye on also, though, later on in the year is when Georgia goes to Texas, too, because Texas is one of the best teams in the country. But as for this game, I think the fact that they're both rested matters. I think they both know how to use those off weeks. Georgia is scary, Alessandro. The fact that they played, or Kentucky played them a close game, see, that happens a lot. Everybody's got the close game. But here's the thing about Georgia. They always win those games. A lot of teams play those close games and they get upset and everything's upside down. Georgia plays a lot of close games. Missouri last year, Kentucky over the years, but they always find a way to win that game. And then they're stronger afterwards. They kind of gain some strength from that near loss that's a win. And I think they'll do that again. Georgia's tough physically, too. Alabama has won all these years under Nick Saban because they're more physical than their opponent. They're not going to be more physical than Georgia. This is going to be a fantastic matchup of two fast, physical teams.
And I'm very excited to watch this game. Let's talk about the Florida State Seminoles. Finally, we get to talk about an FSU victory. They handed a big loss to Cal, who was undefeated. Florida State obviously winning their first game of the season. Maybe this is what maybe the Florida State Seminoles turned the corner now. This is what they're going to be showing for the rest of the season. I bet all Seminoles fans will be very excited to hear that.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know how they won the game, though. And credit them for red zone defense was fantastic. Cal lived in the red zone. But Cal doesn't have a very good place kicker. The transfer from North Carolina, he missed 2 field goals. He also, other times they turned it over on down. So Cal lived in that. I thought Cal outplayed Florida State for much of that game. But when it mattered, FSU made big plays in the red zone. They made stops. DJ Uyunglele threw the one late touchdown pass, and that's all they needed. So FSU got out of there with a win, and, man, did they need a win. Good for the Noles, because it's going to get tough when they go to SMU this week. I promise you that. That's going to be a hard game. But they needed one win. Again, they weren't great, but the red zone defense, I'll say this too, that Florida State defense is coming of age now. That defensive line, which was billed as the best in the country, and then we watched them for a couple games, and maybe they're not as good as advertised. Well, they're starting to play well now. That defensive line looks really good. FSU's football team looks really good. They're physical, but they've got to get some offense going, Alessandro. That's the problem with winning is when you win, you're unlikely to make changes, and I'm still not sure with DJU they're great offensively. But they better find some offense. SMU just scored 66 against TCU last week, so they better find some offense this week.
Okay, let's talk about this matchup on Saturday. Another night game, 8 p.m. kick. What do you like about the Seminoles matching up against SMU?
What I don't like is can they score with them? FSU's got to play their best defensive game of the year. FSU's got to be good because SMU can really score. What helps them is they hung 66 against TCU, but, man, that is a bitter rival. SMU is in Dallas and TCU is in Fort Worth, and they're right next to each other, and they don't like each other. There was trash talk. And I think SMU will have a little bit of a letdown. That was an emotional win, and it's hard to win that big game after your emotional win. Now, what helps them, though, is everybody knows how good FSU is. This is the creme de la creme of the ACC in SMU's first year in the ACC, so they'll be ready to play. Alessandro, FSU's defense has to keep them in that game because I don't think they can go up and down the field and score with SMU. If FSU can keep it at a 24-20 kind of game, I think the Noles have a chance. That thing gets to 28 or 30, SMU's going to beat them. They've got to make it a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Let's move over to the Gators. Finally, the 2-2 Florida Gators. Hey, let me tell you, Frank, you all thought that Florida was so bad, but now you know that there's a worse team in the SEC, and it's the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Boy, Mississippi State was really bad, weren't they? And even then, they rushed for 240 yards against that bad Florida defense. But here's the good news. Florida's got two really good quarterbacks. Graham Mertz is a good player, and DJ Lagway is going to be a very good player. They only had 2 incompletions between them in that game. What will keep Florida alive is the fact that they can score with some people. They're going to score some points. I think ultimately, as the year goes on, that offense, they got to get the young players. If they get Trey Wilson back, if they get Aiden Mizell going a little bit, they've got an off week this week before UCF comes in there, so they can kind of catch their breath a little. Offensively, they'll be okay. The question with them as they move forward, think about this, Alessandra. Mississippi State just ran for 240 yards against them. In 2 weeks, they play UCF. UCF leads the nation in rushing offense. The week after that, they play Tennessee. Tennessee's second in the nation in rushing offense. So the key will be, can they stop the run, because they've not been very good at that as they move forward. But boy, did the Florida Gators need a win, and they found a way to get one against a bad Mississippi State team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Billy Napier said that after the game this past Saturday, that their defense needs to improve, especially their run defense. I got to ask, final question, do you think Billy Napier's win against Mississippi State helped him at all keep his job, or do you think that, you know, the ending is still near?
No, that's a great question, Alessandra. Yes, it helped. It helped. If you lose that game, you might not have made it to the next one. But I think it's going to be tough this year. UCF, and again, we'll talk about this next week because the game's a week away. The Gators have an off week. UCF, by the way, plays Colorado this week, so they may have an emotional letdown when they play Florida as well. We'll talk about it next week. But if you beat UCF and get to 3-2, then you've got a chance. You're not going to win at Tennessee. They could come home and beat Kentucky. I think they've got to get to 6 wins. I'm not sure I see 6 wins, and I think that's what will keep his job. So my guess is still Billy Napier does not make it to 2025. But yes, this win helped a lot. And, man, beating UCF would really help his cause as well.
There you go, Frank. Next week, I'm very excited to recap the 2 games that we just previewed this Saturday. Frank, thank you, and thank you for watching Campus Corner.